Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Heidi, who's going to take us through a very interesting entitled presentation, Impossible Decisions, Damned If You Do, Damned If You Don't. I'm looking forward to hearing what Heidi has got to say. Thank you.
Incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard in so many different ways because the loss of a child is something that no one should ever experience, ever, not anybody. And then as soon as she had passed, I then had to go and have the treatment that she'd been born early in order for me to have, which completely covered me in guilt. That's how I felt, absolutely covered in guilt.
In the forest lives a unicorn whose fur is perfect white. His mane is pure and golden and shimmers day and night. Oh, this is so morbid, but I'm not scared to die. I'm not scared of the process. I'm massively worried about saying goodbye. Wow. Maybe they'll think that I've abandoned them or something. You know, I'm terrified about that. I just want them to know how much I love them. I have horrifying moments where I am wailing and I'm devastated, and then I'll lie there and I'll think, whoa, this is really my life, like that's scary. And then I think, right, you just need to get a grip of yourself, because actually you're not dead yet, are you? You feel fine, don't you? Therefore, crack on.
Wow, fucking hell. I just break the ice because I do swear quite a lot, so if I lead with that, we're all right. That's the way I figure it. So, yeah, that's me. And sometimes I stand there and I watch that and I think, oh, that poor woman, that's bloody awful. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, that's me. How bizarre. Because it's just, yeah, it's something that if you wrote it down for Hollyoaks or Emmerdale, you'd be like, oh, that is bullshit. As if that's ever actually going to happen to one person. It's ridiculous. But honestly, I am telling the truth about what I'm about to tell you about me and my tripod of doom, as I like to call it. So yes, I'm aware that I have the painful job of having the last slot of the day. So I'm going to, try and condense it down a little bit, because I'm sure you're all getting flat arses from sitting here all day. But the tripod of doom is inflammatory breast cancer, which is the most rare and aggressive type of breast cancer, cancer in pregnancy, and subsequently baby loss, which is what we're here to talk about today. I don't quite fit the brief for today. But, just bear with me. Hopefully you'll get something out of it. What I'll do is I'll just tell you a little bit about what happened, which was, so I had my little boy Noah in Christmas 2012, and it was an amazing experience. Well, the birthing part wasn't, the blood and the poo and everything, that was horrendous. But the actual joy of bringing a child into the world, amazing. So I thought, oh, this is so great, I'm going to do it again really quickly. Which wasn't the best idea I'd ever had, because having two really small ones, both boys together, is like the Thunderdome. But I was breastfeeding my second boy, Tate, and he was about 5 months old at the time. And I was sat in the, I was on the night, it was night shift, I think, and he's latched on left side. I'm scratching continuously on the right side. thinking, oh, what the hell's going on here? I look down and I'm like, oh, there's a bit of a rash there. Ah, great, I've got mastitis. And I'd missed that with the first child. I'd never had that, so I thought this is a bit odd. Normally, you know, we're 5 months in. I'm sure is that strange, mastitis now? Well, maybe not. So I carried on, and then I spoke to a couple of my friends that had previously had mastitis, and they'd said it was a bit unusual at that point, and that it should clear on its own, and not to worry about it. And because, you know, I couldn't be really, I suppose, bothered to go and raise a flag at that point, because it was going to go away. I was only 32 and it wasn't going to be anything else, and, you know, I had the kids and all that, and no time for anything else. So I just carried on. And when it didn't clear, I thought, I probably should go and get this looked at. So I went to the doctors, my local GP, and he was a massive bell end, this guy. He was just basically just looked at me and he said, what's the problem? And I said, well, I'm breastfeeding and I've got a rash. Ah, yeah, it's mastitis. So, yeah, okay, so if I just finish the rest of the story, which is that I've had it for about 6 weeks, yeah, it's mastitis. Okay, well, it's massive. I don't have any other symptoms. I don't feel any pain. He was like, it is mastitis. I said, well, okay, thank you, but I really feel that it might not be. And he said, oh, would you want me to look at your boobs? And I felt like saying, not fucking really. However, we need to get to the bottom of this. So out I flopped my giant red breast, and he just went, it's mastitis. I was like, okay then, thanks very much. But because he'd been such an arse, it did make me think I needed to go back for a second opinion. And my husband had kept saying to me that my boob looked like a car crash, which was really charming, and that I should go and get a second opinion. So I did, and I saw I'd say she was much nicer, really good GP. She did like a full breast examination, all the massaging and all the checklist for things that could be wrong that aren't mastitis. And did I have a history of cancer in the family? No. Was I a smoker? No. Did I drink? Not really. Oh, you're breastfeeding still? Yeah, both extended breastfeeding with both my kids. Right, okay, well, it's not going to be anything other than probably mastitis, but because you've had it for so long, it is a bit unusual. Here's some antibiotics, take those, at least we can sort of rule out that. And because she wasn't worried, so I wasn't worried. I had no lumps or anything like that at all. And she wasn't worried, so I wasn't worried, and I was going away on a drinking weekend with my mates. You're not going to take antibiotics when you drink, apparently, so I postponed taking them. And then when I got back, I was moving house, and, you know, I sort of took them, but it was a bit of a half-assed attempt, like one every couple of days or something, and then... So I didn't really think anything of it. You know, the rash didn't go away, and I thought, well, yeah, it's because I've slacked off on the meds and that kind of thing. So then I went on holiday, and while I was on holiday, I was over at my auntie's, because she lives in Spain, and I'm scratching away, and I'm thinking, God, it's definitely getting worse. And my cousin went, bloody hell, your tit is huge. And not the other one, it's like weird. And I was like, well, yeah, it is a bit, because that one was almost double the size of the other one at this point. I was just like, yeah, it's nothing, it's mastitis or something. She was like, right, yeah, it's a bit weird though, isn't it? I went, yeah. She went, oh, and it looks like an orange a bit. And I was like, well, it is a bit like an orange actually, all like dimply. And then I noticed one of my, you know, the bit that pokes out, the pointy nip bit, was like poking inwards on one side. I just thought, that's odd as well, isn't it, really? A bit strange. Anyway, you know, it's not going to be anything. Then one day I woke up and I was barfing all day long. And my mum starts going to me, you're pregnant again, aren't you? I'm sure you are. I said, literally, if I am, it is borderline immaculate conception. Because, you know, me and my husband, two very small children, still feeding in the night. You know, if we had, I was sat there thinking, yeah, well, I'm not really sure when that's happened, so I don't think it can be. Anyway, I went back and we'd moved house, and I thought it's about time I went and got this thing looked at. And but I thought the first thing they're going to ask me, because it's boobs and hormones and things, is you could be pregnant, so I better rule that out. So I went and bought a pregnancy test and came back and peed on the stick, and boom, boom, 2 lines. I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant already, and I've got like one that's really young and another one that's even younger and it's still feeding. And oh my God, I'm pregnant and this is crazy. And I was about to start a master's at UE at the time. And I thought, shit, like, how's that going to work? Like, oh, this is scary. And then, but it's bloody exciting. And I thought, oh, well, that explains it all. It's not going to be, you know, anything. So I trotted off to the doctors and said, giant boob, breastfeeding, pregnant. And she said, well, let's have a look at it. And she was just like, not happy with this at all, actually. She said, I was a breastfeeding mum and I would not call this mastitis. I'm going to send you to a breast clinic. I was like, oh, right, okay. A hospital about boobs, interesting. And 2 weeks later, went off for my appointment, in between which I had a dating scan because I had no idea how pregnant I was. And found out I was 10 weeks. So my husband was like, 10 weeks? When would that make the, you know? And I said, well, I don't know. And he was like, have you got anything you need to confess? I was like, no, when would I have the time? And who would want this? And you're like, at the moment, you know, it's not going to happen. So, you know, we're both really excited. We're, you know, pregnant and all normal. And I go for this appointment and I'm sat in this breast clinic and there's all these really old people everywhere. And I'm thinking, I don't fit in here and I feel really bad because I'm taking up someone's appointment and it's really embarrassing. Went in for the appointment, sat down. Bloke, doctor, dude goes, oh, you know, it's probably going to be mastitis. I was like, for fuck's sake, if I had a pattern for every time I'd heard that in the last 6 months. But it was all very jovial, and they were like, oh, you're pregnant, oh, yeah, brilliant, blah, blah, blah. But the minute I flopped out the giant red boob, everything kind of changed. The atmosphere was, it just went like that. But I'm thinking, well, what are they worried about? There's no lumps there, you know, it's not going to be anything. And bit of poking around, a bit of a biopsy, and he said this needle's going to really hurt when it goes in, and I didn't feel a thing, which made me think it was a bit odd. And then rather than, oh, how many weeks pregnant are you? It was, how many weeks pregnant are you? I was like, oh, I'm 12. I think I was 12 then at that point, because I just had my 12-week scan about 3 days before. And I was like, yeah, 12 weeks, really excited. Okay, well, we need you to come back in 7 days' time. And I was like, yeah, but it says on the leaflet, you text me my results. Why do I need to come back? And like, oh, well, you just do. And you need to come back on the 10th of September. I said, oh, I can't do that. That's my little boy's first birthday. I'm not coming back that day. And they were like, well, Miss Loughlin, actually, we weren't married at that point. Miss Loughlin, you do need to come back urgently. So I went away thinking, oh shit, you know, this is really not good. So I started Googling, which you should never do, scrolled past all the cancer websites, and then thought, well, there's nothing coming up except an infection, and it doesn't sound right, so maybe I should look at the cancer website. It went on the cancer website, and it was like lumpy boobs, blah, 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 history of cancer, smoking, da-da-da. So I scroll past, none of that's relevant. And then there was this little headline that said inflammatory breast cancer. And it was almost like, if you're going to get cancer, this is what you really don't want. You'll be dead really quickly. It's terrible prognosis. And, you know, start setting your affairs in order because you're stage 3 on presentation minimum, which is, like, not good. So I was like, okay, looked at all the symptoms, red rash, swelling of the breast, inverted nipple, orange peel skin. Basically looks like an infection, doesn't necessarily present with lumps. I was like, shit, this sounds familiar. But we cracked on with Tate's birthday, and that was the last day of being sort of normal, I suppose. But I had this fear of doom over me because I just thought, shit, we're getting the results tomorrow. And I went into hospital and they beckoned me down this dark corridor. And we were walking further and further into the back of this hospital, and it was almost straight to the morgue. That's how I thought, they've given up on me already. This is absolutely outrageous. And then I saw this big sign that said, like, breast care. And I thought, right, okay, I'm still hanging on to a little bit of positivity here. And then they opened the door, and then there was these frigging frilly cushions everywhere. I was like, this is the bad news room. And then there was a clipboard, and that was it. I knew that things were bad at that point. So we sit down, and he says, I'm really sorry. I've got to tell you that we found some cancer in your breast. I was like, okay, what type? Which is weird, because I didn't know there were types of breast cancer. I just thought there was breast cancer. And he said, oh, you wouldn't have heard of this. It's called inflammatory breast cancer. And I was like, funnily enough, I have heard of that. And then it was just awful. And then they just said, and we know what you're going to ask us. And I said, yeah, what is going to happen with my baby? Is my baby going to get cancer? Because I've got cancer. What's going to happen? And they said, well, unfortunately, in your situation, you've got a hormone called HER2, which accelerates the growth of cancer cells, and you cannot have treatment for that while you're pregnant. So many women in your position would consider an abortion. I just couldn't compute that in my head at all, because I knew what that looked like at that point. I was 13 weeks then, and I knew what I'd have to go through, and I'd already bonded, and I was really excited, and I just couldn't get my head around that. And I said, look, there's got to be another, what's the alternatives? And they said, well, you could have a type of chemotherapy, but it's not really what you need. It's like a half-assed attempt at trying to do something, which we could try, but you want to really think about what you're going to do. But if you do that, you have to deliver early, because you will die if you carry to full term. You will not be here. So I said, right, well, let's do that. I like plan B. Let's go with plan B. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Let's just get on with it. It was very much a crack-on attitude. They said, do you want us to leave you in the rooms for like half an hour? I was like, no, that's half an hour of my time taken up with doing something that I can do when I get home. So let's just get on with it. So they set the plan in place. I went home. I had to then tell my mum that I had a prognosis of 2 to 5 years and that I was turning down treatment to save my baby's life, which for my mum was horrendous, because she wanted me to be there, but could understand my absolute maternal draw to protect my daughter. Well, found out she was a girl, to protect my daughter. So that was bloody awful. And then I just looked at both my boys. You know, one was still under 1, the other was 2, and I just thought, I'm not going to be here to see you grow up. I don't know what to do with that information. And it was awful. I climbed into bed with Noah and I just cried, because all the plans I had with him were unravelling in front of me. But what pushed me through was my absolute protectiveness for my baby, was to get her here by hook or by crook. So I started chemotherapy. So in my town, we had a big, fat, bold woman wandering around when all my hair fell out. So you can imagine what that looked like. And, you know, your pee's bright red, so because of the chemotherapy, and no one told me. So when I first went for a pee, I thought I was having a miscarriage, because it was all red spraying everywhere, but it was just the drugs. And having someone connect you to a chemotherapy drip when you're pregnant is a really weird feeling, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And it wasn't quite deemed as 100% safe at that point. So it was a bit of a, you know, it was scary. But it didn't work. I had 3 cycles of it and it did nothing. And it got to the point that Ali, as we called her, my little girl, her chances of survival were going up and mine were going down like this. And we had to get to a point where we crossed over where her survival was going to be deemed really good and mine would be at the best that I could, for the best of my ability, to get her here safe. So they decided that at 28+1 that she'd be delivered, and I knew she'd be in NICU for 12 weeks, and I would then have 12 weeks of aggressive treatment. We didn't know how bad my cancer was because I couldn't have the dye contrast in the CT scans and MRIs and stuff, so I didn't really know how far the spread was at that point, but that was another risk I was willing to, you know, it was just, to be honest, it was by the by really at that point. So she was delivered and she was brilliant. She was textbook premature baby. She was really doing really well. She cried when she was born, and I'd remembered because I'd had 2 sort of out of the boot births before with all the pain and just a paracetamol, which does nothing, by the way. Don't even bother offering that to people. And I just, you know, had to have like a spinal thingamajig, and I kicked the guy in the balls because he said sometimes it causes a reaction. You'll know a lot more about this. It causes your leg to go funny if they hit a nerve, and I kicked the guy right in the balls, and he just went, it's all right, it's okay, as long as you're all right. I was like, as long as you're all right, I feel really bad now. But she came out and she was brilliant, and all of this was on camera because I was filming a documentary for the Discovery Channel at the time. Just a little small detail, there was a bloody room full of people, and out she came, and she was amazing. You may recall seeing her in the papers and stuff, because it was one of the pictures popped up before of when she was born. You know, it was everywhere. Everyone was amazed that baby Ali Louise Smith was here, and Mum had risked her life to have her baby, and what an amazing conclusion it was to the story. Mum was going to go off and have treatment. Ali was going to be in NICU. I'd go for one hospital for drugs in my arm and the other for drugs in my heart. And unfortunately, when she'd been around for 5 days, I decided it was time to go home and see the boys, because I knew I was going to be in and out of hospital constantly. It was coming up to Christmas, because she was born on the 11th of December. And I thought I'd better nip home and see the boys. I wondered what the hell's happened to me. And I went home that night. And the next morning I woke up to a call from the registrar to say, please come in, because Ali's had a bleed to the brain. Don't panic. It's a bleed to the brain. Very common, okay, right, that sounds really scary. But my friend who'd had a premature baby at 30 weeks rang me and was like, Archie had them all the time. It's really, it's quite common, don't panic. But when we got there were so many people around her incubator, and they just looked at me, and that look of, oh, fuck. And I sat down, well, actually I didn't, I stood, and they said that she'd had 2 catastrophic bleeds to the brain, one to either side, of which she would not recover. But they weren't quite sure why she'd had it. And I just remember, it was weird. I almost feel like both sides of my head were being sheared off. I don't know how to explain it really, but I just remember lowering myself into a chair like you see on dramas, where people go, oh my God, I can't believe it. But that is literally how it was. It's just this, I need to sit down or I don't know what's going to happen. So then we had to wait. They wanted to find out what had caused these catastrophic bleeds, to see if there was any chance of any part of her being recovered whatsoever. So we had to wait 24 hours to find out the results of that. And I tell you what, those 24 hours were just hideous. The thing is, no one expects their baby to die, and nothing prepares you for that. But I think I was a knob, because I thought for everything I'd gone through to get her here, there's no way that she wouldn't be okay. And I just felt completely take the legs out from under me, really, because I thought, oh, it's so poetic. I've risked my life for her. She's going to be fine. And there we were. And it turned out that she'd contracted serratia from a baby in the incubator just next to her, that they hadn't told us that there was an infection on the ward, so people weren't gloving up and things like that. And she'd caught this serratia, and because it was serratia, there was absolutely zero chance of her recovering, and that we needed to let her go. So we were put into a suite, and Ali was brought in with us, and I remember just running to the ensuite and just going whoa, like this, because I felt like I needed to puke even though I hadn't eaten for days. It was just like that feeling of, oh my God, I just got to do something, and I don't just spew or shit myself or what. I didn't know what to do at that point, and we had to say goodbye to her, and then we had to watch her as she basically let go of her last breaths, and we read her a story, Room on the Broom by Julia Donaldson, which is a really big favourite of ours with our boys. And we just watched her lie there peacefully as she sort of, gave out her last breaths, and the neonatologist came in and just looked at us and just started crying. He just said, I'm so sorry. And I was just like, it's all right, don't worry, are you okay? And it was horrendous, and I'm not going to wax lyrical about how great everybody was, because they were great, and you've heard so many stories today about how great the care can be, and it was good, and despite the situation, the compassion was there, and that was such a key point for us. I remember the one really shit part was when I went back for the follow-up, which was when we were told about the serratia, and it was put to me that potentially what could have happened is me and the baby's mum next door could have shared the same chair, and I could have touched the handles of the chair and then touched Ali and passed on the infection to Ali myself. So that was great to be told that I potentially could have been responsible for a death. So that would be one little thing I'd say, please never say that to anyone, because it's absolutely horrendous. I just think it might have been an arse covering exercise, I don't know. But I'm not bitter and I don't hate anyone, I'm not angry with anybody, because at the end of the day, I would never want everything about Ali to be really negative. But I have to tell you that in the few hours after, or days even, that after she died, I wanted to die. And that's all I could think about was, this is unbelievable. How can I'm going to die anyway from frigging cancer. I just want to die. I can't deal with this. This is the worst feeling. She's gone, and what do I do? And it was awful. And then I had to have an MRI scan, and then I found out the cancer had spread to my lungs, and things were looking really dire. And but I tell you what, that scan was amazing for me, because that was the one thing that kicked me right back in the balls. Because it made me go, oh shit, no, I don't want to die. I've got 2 boys at home that absolutely need me, and I'm in control of what happens to them. So that gave me a bit of a kick up the arse. And I thought, what would Ali think if I sat here and just gave up? Like you've heard from other people today, what would they think if we just gave up? Well, what would be the point? So I looked at the boys and I thought, right, what can I do? I cannot control that I've got cancer. I can't do anything about it. I have chemotherapy every 3 weeks in the hope that it will buy me as much time here as possible. I'm determined to be here for a long time, and I make plans way off into the future, despite what anybody tells me. And I think, well, I am in control of the childhood that my boys have. So I can take control of that, and I don't have to let what's happened to us swallow up their childhood. So if you peeled the roof off our house, you would see an extremely normal, happy family. And we have a great time and we laugh a lot. And it really pulled me through. It really pulled me through. Just knowing that I can control for them. And actually, what do you do if you're told, well, you're going to die? We're not quite sure when it's going to happen, but it's going to be a lot sooner than most people your age. Well, I could spend my entire time between now and then shitting myself about what's going to happen, or I could think, wow, what if it doesn't happen? And what if I live until I'm 55 or 75, and I've written off my life being terrified about what might actually happen to me, when old Fred next door goes out and gets wiped out by the X3 to Bristol, I'm in control of how I get to that point. So it's really kicked me back up the backside. And actually, one of the guys on the film said someone told him everything happens for a reason. Well, I absolutely despise and loathe that, because there's absolutely zero reason for us to have lost our children. Nothing good comes out of that. But what you can do is give something back, which is why people are here today and why you guys are here today. And you are so in control of what experiences people can have. You can't control everything, we all know that. But you can control something for maybe somebody else. So what I hope to do is that, if I do snuff it next year because my drugs have failed and everything else has run out and there's nothing for me, I want to be remembered as a good mum that never gave up, that was positive and wasn't defined by cancer and wasn't defined by just a cancer mum loses baby, it's so tragic. Yes, that's happened to me, it's shit, but that doesn't define me. I want to have been able to give something back and people to say, well, she still did that. And people give up for so smaller reasons, don't they? They just give up. But you can make such a difference to somebody. And you guys are joining this profession. You're doing it because you care. I joined the police force knowing I was going to get spat at, have to deal with drunks and some of the dregs of society, really. But I knew that I would make a difference to even maybe just one person, and you guys are doing that for the same reason. You could sell out and go and work for some multi-billion-pound company, or you can do something to help somebody else. And you have got such a role where you're dealing with people that are going through a loss. You will make such an impact, either it be negative or positive, but you are in control of that. So that's what you've got to remember. When you go away, what would you like people to remember you for? Being negative or being positive? So just remember that you are in control of what you leave behind. And that's it. Thank you for listening.